Daniel Hutchinson watched the clock tick past midnight, the soft glow of his desk lamp casting long shadows across the scattered papers and photos that littered his office. He was a man whose life had been built on hard work and perseverance. Yet tonight, the weight of betrayal pressed down heavier than any business challenge he'd faced. His wife, Olivia, had returned from a conference just weeks ago, radiant as if she'd uncovered some secret to eternal happiness. New clothes, flawless makeup, a lightness in her step that didn't quite fit with the woman he thought he knew. Daniel was 48, the owner of a thriving chain of burger joints stretching across 3 counties in northern England. From a single greasy spoon in a sleepy market town, he'd grown his empire to 30 locations, each one a testament to his relentless drive. Olivia and he had 4 children. Harry, 17, a lanky lad with his father's serious eyes. Emily, 15, whose artistic flair was evident from her paint-streaked fingers. Max, 12, a boisterous bundle of energy. And little Sophie, just 9, with her dimpled smile and boundless curiosity. Or so he had believed. The truth was a slow, creeping poison, one he first tasted when a private investigator, reluctantly hired after weeks of nagging doubts and warnings from his own father, delivered news that shattered everything. Olivia, the woman who managed their home with quiet efficiency, had been weaving a web of lies for nearly 2 decades. Daniel remembered the way Olivia had prepared for that conference in Nottingham with an enthusiasm he'd never quite seen before. Carefully packed bags, dresses that shimmered with elegance rather than the usual practical cotton she favored, and lingerie that whispered secrets in silk and lace. She told him it was all about education advocacy, a cause close to her heart since their children's school days began. But something felt off. When Olivia returned, glowing and full of vague buzzwords about innovative learning and student empowerment, Daniel should have been happy for her. Instead, his gut twisted with unease. The confident woman who'd once been his steadfast partner now seemed like a stranger wearing a mask of contentment. That night, her unexpected passion in bed was both a balm and a warning. His father, George Hutchinson, a grizzled war veteran with a sharp mind and sharper tongue, had tried to warn him months earlier during a quiet evening on the porch. "Danny, lad, when a woman starts dressing up more and disappearing off to conferences without you, there's usually a storm brewing," he'd said, his eyes narrowing like a hawk sizing up prey. Daniel had shrugged it off, convinced that modern marriages had different rules. But George had been right. The call from Rick Sullivan, the PI Wesley recommended, was the beginning of the end. Images of Olivia with 2 men, the trusted family friend Frank Benson and a teacher from Emily's school, Mark Collins, left Daniel reeling. Frank was more than a friend. He'd been a fixture at birthday parties, barbecues, the kind of man who'd played grandfather to his children. And Mark, the man who'd been entrusted with his daughter's education, was now a symbol of betrayal. By the time Daniel received the DNA results, the last threads of his world unraveled. Max and Sophie were his, without a doubt. But Harry and Emily? Not a genetic match. The resemblance between Harry and Frank was unmistakable: sharp jawline, deep-set eyes. Emily's delicate features seemed to echo Mark's, the man who had sat across from Daniel in a sterile, silent school office just days before, defeated and broken. The confrontation with Olivia was a quiet storm. Her tears were not of repentance but desperation. "Please don't destroy us," she begged. But the damage was done. Daniel's heart ached not just for himself but for the children who'd lived a lie. That night, as Olivia's sobs filled the room, Daniel felt the cold clarity of a man who had lost everything but still clung to one unbreakable truth. He was their father, in every way that mattered. And as dawn broke over the quiet streets of their small town, Daniel made 3 calls that would change everything. His lawyer, his father, and Frank Benson, the man who had been both friend and foe. The game had just begun. The midday sun filtered through the grimy windows of Murphy's bar, casting a lazy haze over the near-empty room. Daniel sat stiffly in the corner booth, his fingers tapping an impatient rhythm against the worn wooden table. He didn't have to wait long. The door creaked open, and Frank Benson stepped inside, his usual easygoing smile replaced by a cautious, wary expression. The years had etched lines deeper into his face, but his eyes still held that familiar spark, the one Daniel once trusted without question. Frank was dressed smartly, in a tailored navy blazer over a crisp white shirt, the top buttons undone just enough to suggest casual confidence. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back, and a silver watch peeked from beneath his cuff. He carried himself like a man who'd spent a lifetime in control, until now. "Danny," Frank said, sliding into the booth opposite him. "I was surprised you called." His voice was low but steady, no hint of the warmth Daniel remembered. "Surprised?" Daniel echoed, placing a photograph on the table between them. It was grainy but unmistakable. Frank and Olivia entering a hotel together late one evening. The kind of evidence that didn't lie. Frank's face paled, his lips pressing into a thin line. "I can explain," he began, but Daniel cut him off with a sharp gesture. 17 years. Frank. 17 years you've been living a lie right under my nose. The words tasted bitter as they left him. "You were like family. You sat at my dinner table, played with my kids, and all the while you were sleeping with my wife." Frank swallowed hard, his fingers twitching nervously on the tablecloth. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he finally admitted, voice cracking. "I never meant to hurt anyone." "Funny," Daniel said darkly, "because you've hurt everyone. My kids, my father, me." He leaned in, eyes blazing. "Did you ever think about the mess you were making? About George? Do you know what you've done to a man who trusted you for half a century?" Frank looked away, shame flooding his features. "George doesn't have to know," he whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "He already suspects. You have 48 hours to tell him yourself or I will." With that, he stood and left Frank sitting alone, the weight of guilt pressing down like a leaden cloak. Later that afternoon, Daniel found himself in an equally uncomfortable setting, the principal's office at Emily's high school. The air was thick with awkward tension as he waited for Mark Collins to arrive. When the young teacher walked in, his confident mask cracked instantly, replaced by pale panic. "Mr. Hutchinson," Mark stammered, adjusting his tie. "Is this about Emily's grades?" Daniel didn't flinch. "No, this is about you sleeping with my wife." Mark's face flushed crimson. "There must be some mistake. No mistake." Daniel slid a folder across the table, filled with photos, hotel receipts, and the DNA report confirming Mark was Emily's biological father. The teacher collapsed into the chair, his hands trembling. 15 years ago, Daniel continued, "You had an affair with a married woman. Now you're teaching your own daughter, hiding this secret from everyone." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You can resign quietly, or I can make this public." Mark swallowed hard, eyes wide with fear. Daniel left him to consider the consequences, knowing the school would soon need a new English teacher. That evening, the hardest moment awaited him at home. The 4 children gathered in the living room, the air taut with a mixture of dread and disbelief. Olivia sat beside Daniel, her face streaked with tears, while the kids looked to their parents for answers. Daniel's voice was steady but heavy. "Kids, there's something you need to know. Your mother and I, things aren't as you thought." He glanced at Harry and Emily, whose faces were pale but attentive. "Harry, your biological father is Frank Benson. Emily, yours is Mark Collins." Shock rippled through the room. Harry's jaw clenched. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "What does that mean?" Max asked. "Confused. It means that while I'm your father in every way that counts, 2 of you share different biological fathers." Daniel explained gently. "But no matter what, I love you all the same." The room erupted in emotion. Anger, confusion, sorrow. Braden stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Emily fled upstairs, sobbing. Max and Sophie clung to Daniel. Frightened by the upheaval, Olivia's sobs filled the silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted this to happen." Daniel looked at her coldly. "You destroyed our family the moment you decided I wasn't enough." That night, Daniel sat silently on the porch beside Harry, who stared at the stars with tear-filled eyes. "Am I still your son?" he asked quietly. "Always," Daniel replied firmly. "DNA doesn't change the love I have for you." Harry nodded, and for the first time since everything fell apart, Daniel felt a glimmer of hope. But as the night deepened, a new shadow crept into Daniel's mind. The knowledge that the past was only the beginning, and the real battle for his family's future was just about to begin. The morning light spilled through the curtains of George Hutchinson's cluttered workshop, where the steady tick of a vintage clock mingled with the faint scent of sawdust and engine oil. Daniel found his father hunched over a disassembled radio, fingers deftly twisting tiny screws, as if the mechanical puzzle could somehow fix what life had broken. George looked up as Daniel entered, his weathered face folding into a concerned scowl. "Danny, you look like you've been through a war," George said, setting down his tools. The years had carved deep lines into his face, but his steel-blue eyes remained sharp, scanning Daniel like a hawk sizing up its prey. Daniel closed the door behind him and took a deep breath. "Dad, we need to talk about Frank Benson." George's expression darkened, the weight of old friendships and new betrayals settling heavily on his broad shoulders. Daniel slid one of Rick Sullivan's photos across the workbench, the grainy image of Frank and Olivia, clandestinely entering a hotel. 17 years, Daniel said quietly. "He's been having an affair with Olivia all this time. Braden is his son." George stared at the photo, his weathered hands trembling slightly. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "DNA test. Certified proof. The private investigator documented everything." George sank onto a nearby stool, the creak of old wood echoing in the workshop. 50 years of friendship. Through wars, marriages, everything. "I never thought he'd stab me in the back like this." Daniel nodded, the familiar ache of betrayal mirrored in his own heart. "What are you going to do?" George's jaw clenched with bitter resolve. "I'm going to see him tonight. He needs to answer for this." Later that evening, Daniel's phone rang. It was his father, voice cold and hard. "It's done, Danny. I told him exactly what I think of him. 50 years of friendship gone in an instant." "How did he take it?" Daniel asked. "Like a frightened rat," George replied, disgust thick in his tone. "Tried to make excuses, but I told him he's dead to me." Daniel hung up, a grim satisfaction settling over him. Justice, in its own raw form, had been served. The next day, Daniel confronted Mark Collins again, this time at a quiet corner of a local bookstore where the teacher now worked after resigning. Mark's nervous glance betrayed his guilt as Daniel's cold words cut through any pretense. "You gave up your rights when you decided to sleep with a married woman," Daniel said. "Stay away from my family." Mark nodded silently and walked away, leaving Daniel with the bitter taste of finality. Back at home, the wreckage of the family lay bare. Olivia's tear-streaked face was a constant reminder of the damage wrought by years of lies. But Daniel's focus was on the children, Harry and Emily, struggling to reconcile their identities. Max and Sophie, caught in the crossfire of shattered trust. Therapy sessions followed, painful conversations unfolded, and slowly, the family began to navigate the treacherous path toward healing. Daniel's love was the anchor in the storm, unwavering and fierce. Months later, a chance encounter at a grocery store brought Daniel face to face with Mark Collins once more. The former teacher's nervous greeting was met with Daniel's steely gaze. "Emily's doing fine," Daniel said flatly. "She has me." Mark's remorse was palpable, but Daniel's message was clear. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. In the quiet moments of reflection, Daniel realized that true strength was not in hiding from pain but facing it head-on. His restaurant empire flourished, not just because of his business acumen, but because he built it on a foundation of hard truths and unshakable integrity. And yet, as life settled into a new rhythm, a lingering question haunted him. Could the past ever truly be left behind, or was there still a secret waiting to unravel beneath the surface? The phone buzzed late one night, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Daniel hesitated before answering. Mr. Hutchinson. A voice whispered, tense and urgent. "There's something you need to know. It's about Olivia." Before Daniel could respond, the line went dead. The game was far from over. Daniel stared at the silent phone, the chill of the unexpected call crawling down his spine like a ghostly whisper. His mind raced, heart pounding as shadows of doubt and suspicion surged anew. Who could that have been? And what else was lurking in the tangled web of Olivia's past? The next morning, The sun rose over the quiet streets of their town, casting golden light on Daniel's office where stacks of paperwork and business plans rested untouched. He rubbed his temples, the weight of the unknown pressing heavy on his thoughts. The empire he'd built, the family he'd fought to protect. It all seemed fragile, vulnerable to secrets waiting to explode. Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel reached for his phone and dialed Rick Sullivan's number. The private investigator answered on the second ring, his voice calm but alert. "Danny, what's up? I got a call last night. Someone claiming to have information about Olivia. I need you to dig deeper, find out if there's anything we missed." Sullivan's tone shifted, a mix of curiosity and caution. "You want me to open the past again?" "Yeah," Daniel said quietly, "because if there's even a chance something's still hidden, I need to know now before it destroys what's left." Within days, Sullivan's investigation uncovered a series of encrypted emails and financial transactions tied to Olivia. Payments to unknown accounts, messages hinting at meetings in cities far beyond their quiet town. The trail led to a shadowy figure known only as M. As Daniel pored over the evidence. A knot of unease tightened in his chest. Olivia's carefully constructed facade was far more complex than he'd imagined. The woman who once hummed around the house with newfound joy had been living a double life, playing roles he'd never suspected. Meanwhile, at home, the children were slowly finding their footing. Harry had thrown himself into football, his fiery temper tempered by steady coaching and family support. Emily's art blossomed, her sketches capturing the raw pain and resilience that marked their family's journey. Max and Sophie, the youngest, still carried the innocence of childhood but grew quieter, sensing the undercurrents beneath adult conversations. One evening, as Daniel sat alone in the dim glow of his study, Olivia appeared at the doorway. Dressed in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves just enough to be alluring without crossing lines, she looked both vulnerable and defiant. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and the faint scent of jasmine lingered in the air. "We need to talk," she said softly. Daniel didn't look up. "There's nothing left to say." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You don't know everything, Daniel. There are reasons. Things you don't understand." He finally met her gaze, cold and unwavering. "Try me." Olivia's eyes flickered with something. Regret? Fear? Maybe desperation. "I was protecting us. Protecting the family. By lying for 17 years. She bit her lip, then nodded. "I thought I was doing the right thing. But it all spiraled out of control." Daniel's jaw clenched. "And what about M? Who is that?" Olivia hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't say. Not yet." Before Daniel could press further, his phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. "Meet me at the old mill tonight. Come alone." Daniel's pulse quickened. The past was clawing its way back, dragging him into shadows darker than before. As dusk settled, he stood outside the abandoned mill on the outskirts of town, the wind tugging at his coat and the creak of rusted hinges echoing in the silence. The door groaned open, and a figure stepped into the fading light. "Daniel Hutchinson," the voice said, low and cold. "You think you've uncovered everything? You're just getting started." The game had deepened, the stakes higher than ever, and somewhere in the darkness, the truth waited, waiting to either destroy or set them free. The old mill loomed before Daniel like a relic from another century, its broken windows and crumbling brick walls bathed in the eerie silver of the moonlight. The air was thick with dampness and the scent of decayed timber. Daniel's boots crunched on gravel as he stepped inside, every muscle taut, senses sharpening. He wasn't sure what or who he was about to face, but after everything he'd endured, fear felt like an old acquaintance he could manage. A shadow detached itself from the darkness near the far wall, and a tall figure emerged. It was a woman, dressed in a tailored black leather jacket over a deep red blouse that clung just enough to hint at curves beneath, paired with slim black trousers and ankle boots that clicked confidently on the concrete floor. Her dark hair framed a face both striking and dangerous, eyes glinting with a mixture of challenge and secrets. "Daniel Hutchinson," she said smoothly, voice low and measured. "I'm glad you came alone." He studied her carefully. "Who are you?" She smiled, no warmth, just a knowing curve of lips. Call me Victoria. I believe you've been asking questions about Olivia, and about me. Daniel's brow furrowed. I don't know anything about you. Victoria took a step closer, the scent of her perfume, something smoky, with hints of vanilla and spice, wafting toward him. That's because you've only scratched the surface. Olivia's little escapades? They're the tip of an iceberg you never saw coming. He straightened, fists clenched at his sides. What do you want? To tell you the truth, or at least part of it. She paused, eyes flicking to the shattered machinery scattered about the floor. Olivia's past isn't just about affairs and lies. There are bigger forces at play. Dangerous ones. Daniel's heart raced. You're talking in riddles. Victoria laughed softly, a sound both melodic and chilling. I know what you're thinking. This sounds like something out of a bad spy novel. But trust me, it's real. And if you want to protect what's left of your family, you need to listen. He swallowed hard, the weight of years of deception pressing down anew. Start talking. Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. Olivia got involved with people she shouldn't have. Powerful people who don't forgive easily. The money trail Rick Sullivan found? That's just a sliver. There's more: threats, secrets, deals made in shadows. She's been hiding it all to keep you safe. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. Safe? She's been lying for years. How is that protection? Because the moment she told you everything, she'd be in danger. And so would you. A sudden noise echoed from the mill's entrance. A metallic clang, footsteps approaching fast. Victoria's eyes narrowed. They found me. We don't have much time. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears as he followed her toward a side door, heart pounding with adrenaline and uncertainty. The stakes had just soared beyond betrayal and broken families. Now, survival was on the line as they slipped into the night. Daniel knew one thing for certain. The unraveling of Olivia's secrets was only the beginning of a far darker story, and the question that haunted him most: how deep was the darkness, and could he ever pull his family back from its grasp?